It was a warm spring evening when I got the call from my brother-in-law, Nathan. We'd always gotten along well. He was charming, thoughtful, and had a quiet, calm energy that put everyone at ease. But we weren't close in the sense of deep conversation or regular check-ins. Our relationship existed mostly within family circles, birthdays, holiday dinners, occasional cookouts, and those chaotic family trips where everyone sleeps in one too few bedrooms. So when my phone lit up with his name on a regular Tuesday evening, I was more than a little surprised. "Hey, Jenna," Nathan said, his voice clear but carrying a tone of uncertainty. "Do you have a minute?" I glanced at the oven timer. Dinner still had 20 minutes. My 8-year-old son, Tyler, was on the couch flipping through channels. "Sure," I said, sitting down at the kitchen table. "What's going on? Everything okay with Allison?" Allison was my sister. She and Nathan had been married for about 10 years. They didn't have children, and though they had a solid relationship, I knew they'd had their ups and downs. But who didn't? "Yeah," he replied quickly. "I mean, nothing's wrong." "Not exactly. It's just, I've been thinking about something for a while, and I didn't know who else to talk to. Now I was really curious." "Okay," I said, trying not to sound too intrigued. "You can talk to me. What's on your mind?" He was quiet for a moment, and I could almost picture him standing in his garage, nervously rubbing the back of his neck, trying to find the right words. "I've been thinking about this trip I want to take," he finally said. "Kind of a personal mission. One of those things I've always wanted to do. A road trip across the states. Just me, my truck, some music, maybe a journal. One of those big, soul-searching things people do before they turn 40. I blinked, a little thrown off. "Okay, and what do you need from me?" "Well," he said, "Allison doesn't want to go. She's not into that kind of thing. And I wouldn't want her to feel like she has to come, or like I'm abandoning her. But I still want to go. I was hoping, maybe you'd come with me." I laughed lightly, thinking he was joking. "You want me to go on a road trip with you? Just the two of us?" "I know it sounds odd," he said quickly. "But you're one of the few people who knows me well enough to make it comfortable, and not so well that we'd kill each other after the first rest stop. You're grounded. You get it. And you're one of the only people Allison would trust." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't been on a trip like that in years, since college, really. And the idea of leaving Tyler, even for a few days, gave me pause. But there was something about the way Nathan asked. Not desperate, not weird. Just honest. Sincere. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "I know it's a lot. Just, give it a day or two." That night, after I'd put Tyler to bed and cleaned the kitchen, I sat on the couch staring at the blank TV screen. The idea of taking off for a few days, just driving, seeing the country, talking, listening to music, maybe even just sitting in silence, it was tempting. Life had felt like a loop lately: work, mom duties, house chores, repeat. A break sounded irresponsible. And yet, incredibly appealing. I called my sister the next day, just to see if she knew anything about Nathan's idea. She didn't. "He wants to take a road trip with you," she said, surprised but not upset. "That's unexpected." "Yeah, it caught me off guard too," I admitted. "Well, if anyone could use a few days away, it's him," she said thoughtfully. "He's been going through something lately. Not midlife crisis level, but just searching, I guess. Honestly, if you're okay with it, I think it would be good for him. And you, too." So, 2 days later, I said yes. We left the following weekend, just the two of us in his truck. I arranged for Tyler to stay with my parents, packed light, and decided not to overthink things. Nathan had mapped out a rough route, from Virginia to New Mexico, with stops in Nashville, Oklahoma City, and small towns in between. It wasn't about the destination, he said. It was about the road. The first few hours were quiet, mostly filled with classic rock and the occasional question about work or family. But by the time we reached Tennessee, something shifted. We started to open up. He told me about his father's recent health scare, something he hadn't even told Allison about yet. I talked about the loneliness of single motherhood, even when surrounded by people. It was strange and comforting at the same time, like talking to someone who knew just enough to understand, but not enough to judge. In Nashville, we stayed in a little roadside motel and went out for barbecue and live music. We laughed a lot that night, especially after 2 beers each. I hadn't laughed like that in years. He told me a story about how he once tried to impress Allison with a handmade dinner and ended up setting off the smoke alarm, ruining the oven, and ordering takeout. It worked, though, he said, grinning. She married me. As the days passed, the road stretched on, and so did our conversations. We talked about dreams, regrets, the what-ifs of life. He admitted he always wanted to write a novel. I confessed I'd once thought about going back to school to become a therapist. We debated music, books, and whether aliens existed. Somewhere in Oklahoma, we drove in total silence for an hour, and it wasn't awkward at all. One night, just outside Amarillo, we stopped at a viewpoint that overlooked the flat, stretching desert. The sky was an ocean of stars, and the silence was complete. We sat on the hood of the truck, staring at the horizon. "I'm glad you came," he said quietly. "I don't know if I could have done this alone." I turned to him. "I'm glad I did too." There was a long pause, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just stillness. "This whole trip," he said after a while, "was my wish. Something I needed, and I didn't know how much until now." I nodded. Sometimes saying yes changes more than you think. We returned 5 days later. Nothing dramatic had happened. No secrets, no betrayals, no scandal. But something inside both of us had shifted. We were no longer just relatives by marriage. We were something else, kindred spirits, perhaps. People who shared a small piece of the same search for meaning. Allison greeted him with a long hug and thanked me for going with him. Tyler threw himself into my arms when I walked through the door. Everything resumed, just like before, but I carried something different with me. Weeks passed. Nathan and I didn't talk much about the trip after that. We didn't need to. It had been a moment in time, a shared journey, and now it lived in that sacred space of memory. But every once in a while, we'd catch each other's eye during a family dinner or while passing dishes at Thanksgiving, and there'd be this quiet look of acknowledgement. A mutual understanding. Saying yes to his wish wasn't about the trip. It was about stepping out of the expected. About choosing something bold, if only for a few days. It reminded me that sometimes, life offers you a detour not to escape, but to rediscover the road you were always meant to be on. And for that, I'll always be grateful I said yes.